out of the ring by that guy, by my opponent. Got back up, got back in the ring, took the standing 8 count, and finished the fight. And I know I met a Marine officer a year later when I was, on service selection night, when I was able to select the Marine Corps. And he said, gutsiest thing I've ever seen. Well, thank you, sir. But, I learned you don't quit. It ain't over until it's over, and it was over that night for me. But
and you mentioned from the gunny that you worked with at the University of Utah that you were thinking Marine Corps when you showed up at the Naval Academy. Did you stick with that the whole time? I
did. My dad being career Navy, I knew I could never fill his footsteps. And he was perplexed why I would want to go Marine Corps. He asked me straight out one time, I think it was a firstie, a senior, he said, Bobby, what is it that Marine Corps second lieutenant has that a Navy ensign doesn't have? They got 3 hot meals a day, a nice bed with sheets to sleep in. So what is a Marine Corps second lieutenant got that a Navy ensign doesn't have? I looked at him and said, Dad, I think it's respect. Ooh,
shots fired.
Shut the old man down.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely shots fired for sure.
And my grandpa was not somebody you would probably want to say that to. I don't know about at the time though.
Well,
he was not the nicest guy.
He just was, like I said, a little to the right of Attila the Hun, and there was a couple of ways to do things. There was his way, and then there was everybody else's. He took me out for dinner before I, got on the train to head off from the Naval Academy from Providence, Rhode Island, where I could catch the train back then. And he told me, Bobby, you graduate from the Naval Academy, and I'll buy you the car of your choice. Oh, thank you, Dad. 4 years later, I'm getting close to graduation. I said, Dad, you remember when I left for the Naval Academy, you told me you'd buy me the car of my choice if I graduated? He looked at me and said, did you get it in writing? No.
And as the other thing that's unfolding is it's in 1963 when you show up there, hey, I'm going to be a Marine, but there's no war going on. Now we fast forward, it's 1967.
Yeah.
And Vietnam is now, Vietnam really started to escalate in like 1965, 1966, even more, 1967. You guys now know in the Marine Corps what you're signing up for. There's no mystery.
Oh, no. We knew precisely what we were signing up for. There was a board. I think this has been referenced in other places, in books and articles, a board of, those who've gone before us, those who've died, and it was starting to fill up with, pictures and names from Vietnam. So, yeah, we understood that. But, I'm sure been in combat yourself, that as you know, it's not going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Maybe the guy on the left or the right, but not you. You're bulletproof, at least in your own mind. And so, you worried about maybe getting maimed. In fact, I don't think we even worried about that. You worried about possibly getting killed, but then, hey, there's nothing after that. Your worries are done. And then your family picks up on it. Or you thought you might get a little, flea flicker wound or something like that and get a Purple Heart, but you never figured, you might come back without limbs or otherwise, markedly impaired. That just never entered your mind. I'm sure if it did, you would have been useless to your unit.
Yeah. The guys that are all going for the Marine option at the Academy, it's competitive, right? It's like it's hard to get that. Is it hard to get that Marine option coming out of the Academy?
Well, I can't speak for today, because today they'll have like 250, guys and gals going to the Marine Corps. In my day, and in the years in the 60s and before, there was a certain percentage of a class that could go to the Marine Corps. We had just about 900 guys in my class, and we had 86 slots. And they were divided in half they took half from the upper half of the class, grade-wise, and half from the lower. So you could get in the Marine Corps, say, and be in the middle of the lower half of your class, when a fellow who was in the lower part of the upper half of his class wouldn't have got selected because those 43 slots were gone. And I got slot 86 when I went down for service selection night. I was sweating bullets, but I got it. In fact, a good friend of mine who was a couple of numbers behind me offered me $2,000 for my spot if I would give it up, because he wanted to go Marine Corps, and I knew how much he wanted to go to Marine Corps. I said, I can't do that. You know that? He said, yeah, I know that. But it was competitive in that respect. It was, academics played a big part in it.
Yeah, the Marine Corps does that with the way they give your jobs in the Marine Corps too, like coming out of the basic school. I know like they take like the class and break it up into thirds, and like the first you pick your job. Mm-hmm. So you could be the number one guy, and if you get the number one guy, you can get your job. But you might be the top of the next third down, and you get your selection. Then the top of the last third, and you get your selection. So it's a way that they distribute the people so that not every single the top of the class everyone goes infantry, and whatever job is at the bottom, we get a bunch of people that weren't the highest performers.
Right, exactly.
The Marine Corps is smart. It's about the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps.
Marine Corps understands that it's about the Marine Corps because they haven't lasted this long without being able to put up a good fight, both in the nation's wars and back in the D.C. area when the time comes along for keeping the Marine Corps.
And now, is your dad talking to you any more about looking at you and saying, hey, son, there's a war going on, and he's, obviously being in the Navy in World War II, he knows exactly what the Marine Corps does. And is he having any more talks to you and saying, hey, you might want to think about this a little bit more?
No, not a one. He kind of respected my decision, I guess, and just, let me go with it. Like I say, he's an interesting person. I got back to Bethesda after I was shot. I spent 12 months in Bethesda. He came to see me once, which for him was probably enough. And actually for me it was enough too. But I later on found out that he obviously was affected, by my being wounded. I kind of joked at him one day. One day we were out, barbecuing some hot dogs or something. And I said, Dad, you almost collected on my life insurance. He said, what are you talking about, Bobby? I said, well, Dad, you almost got that $10,000 of, servicemen's group life insurance from my demise in Vietnam. I said, don't talk like that. That was it.
That's the affection you got from the old man.
That was the understanding and the compassion that I got from Dad.
So you get done with the Naval Academy, you graduate, and now you're going to the basic school.
Right.
Do you remember what rank you were at the academy? How close to the bottom were you?
Oh, I think I was since on service selection night, went down in groups of 50, which is why I was sweating getting a place in the Marine Corps, because they could have all been gone by the time I got down there in the last group of 50. Because I was in the last group of 50.
Oh, there you go.
So,
answers that question. You weren't anchor man, so you didn't.
No, I wasn't.
You didn't collect any money.
I didn't get the dollar from everybody, but.
Is that what the last happens with the last guy?
That's right.
Allegedly, I've never confirmed, but the last person in the class gets $1 from every classmate.
Else, Well, so you can walk off with $600, $700, $800, $900.
The spot of distinction, I guess. Or not.
Well, you still graduated. So I guess at that point it doesn't matter. And you got paid. So.
My class, we were kind of put out because our anchor man was a foreign national, I think from a country that didn't even have a Navy. So we were like, do we really want to fork over this buck for this guy? And of course we did, because that's a tradition. It's always been that way.
So you show up at TBS, and now it's 1968?
No. Graduated in June 7th of 67, and I put in for the first basic school class that was forming, which was the 1st of July. That was the beginning of the fiscal year back then, July 1st. So, I had a few weeks at home, boom, right back down to Quantico to start the basic school.
Okay, so you started in the summer, sometime in the summer of 67.
Right.
And then how well did the Naval Academy prepare you for the basic school?
I think pretty well. Of course, we didn't ever get into the tactical side of things at the Naval Academy for the Marine Corps, but you were in good shape. You obviously could wear your uniform, whichever it was, a Marine Corps or Navy uniform, well, because you've been doing it for the past 4 years. And I had gone to jump school on my summer leave between junior and senior year, and the physical requirements for that were pretty demanding. We got down to Fort Benning in August after cruise, and man, that baby is hot. That red clay in Georgia reflects that heat, and you sweat.
They saw those midshipmen coming.
And of course, we'd be running around with Navy chairs, and any cadre fella, a staff sergeant or something, could pop up and halt us and drop us for push-ups and everything, which we loved. I don't think there were any UDT or SEAL groups going through when we went through, but they just ate the program up,
Yeah.
Needless to say.
I was one of the. Eventually, SEALs stopped going to airborne school at Fort Benning, Georgia, and started running it in-house.
Okay.
But yeah, I was lucky enough to go to airborne school, and yes, the instructors down there definitely appreciated our presence and let us know that.
Sure they did.
It's ridiculous too, because we're coming out of buds.
Right.
Literally a week or whatever. We travel across country, we show up there, so we're in really good shape. So there was really nothing that they could do to us that would hurt us, and we just would. And of course, that encouraged guys to be, wise asses, and I'm going to make you do push-ups. You can't make me do enough push-ups. So there's that whole thing going. And now that you're at TBS, though, well, now you know exactly what's going to happen. You're going to go to Vietnam.
Right, regardless of your MOS that you came out with. Of course, I wanted to be an 03, and most of my friends did too.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So it's not actually guaranteed. So I'm thinking you still have to do a service selection inside, or whatever, a job selection inside the Marine Corps.
Exactly. You put in for your top 3, and you hope you get number 1, of course, and most guys did. You're pretty savvy about your capabilities and your likes and dislikes by the time you get to TBS, I think, regardless of where you come from. We had a lot of recent ROTC grads, some recent OCS grads, and the Naval Academy grads, and you couldn't distinguish who came from what pipeline. We were all pretty motivated folks back then.
And I'm sure all the instructors must have been guys that were coming off of tours in
Vietnam.
They
were just back from their tours in Vietnam, and they were all captains or above. Yeah, very sharp guys. They didn't pick slackers, to be instructors at TBS.
And compared to the Naval Academy, was it just a totally different vibe of seriousness because they know exactly what they're preparing you guys for?
It sure was. You're out on problems. Daytime problems, nighttime problems, didn't matter when they ended. If you got back and turned in any gear you checked out at 3 a.m. in the morning, you're still up, at dark 30 the next morning. You didn't do that at the Naval Academy. You had study hour and stuff like that. But no, there was a definitely heightened level of seriousness at the basic school. Again, all the instructors who were giving you straight poop, because they had just come back from there or recently back. My platoon commander, we had a platoon of about 50 guys. He was a captain, 2 silver stars, well decorated, big guy. They don't take, Marine Corps looks at you all kinds of ways. They look at how you did at basic school, your height versus your weight, some other obviously other factors before they assign you someplace. Like if you think you want to get to 8th and I and be part of that in Washington D.C., you've got to be like 6 feet or higher and taller or whatever, because they're sending the cream of their crop, because you're representing the United States Marine Corps in front of the public on a regular basis, and rightfully so. All the services do that. The guards at Arlington aren't 4'8" and sloppy. They're all standing tall and looking good and very professional. Needless to say.
How hard was it to when you started picking your job? Obviously, you said you wanted to be an infantry platoon commander. Mm-hmm. How much competition was there for that? Did you have guys that were like, "Oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that job. You can have it." Or was there competition for it?
I think there was only we didn't feel competition. obviously you had to do well on the O course and all the different evolutions, and you had to pass the PRT, and you had to do well in land navigation, daytime, nighttime.